Hello and welcome to the next episode of Digital Supply Chain Institute Insights in Action, where we explore the latest trends, strategies, and challenges in supply chain management. Today, we will be focusing on one very important thing, no matter from which aspect you look into supply chain or overall company success, in a way of how KPIs are implicating the journey to success and how KPIs are actually aligning in today's transforming supply chain into the digital world, but as well connecting with all the challenges which supply chains have today. We have with us today a great guest and a great member of DSCI, Sasha Koff, the founder and president of So Help Me Understand, and the former senior vice president of digital supply chain at Dell. And by the way, as well, the DSCI co-chair. Sasha, welcome.
Hi, Marco. It's great to be with you today and obviously talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, for sure.
So, Sasha, you consult and work with C-suite executives, on strategy and supply chain transformation, digital practices, best practices, KPI, talent, like the whole spectrum, if we can put it that way. And, like from your experience and views, we would like to tap into that practical knowledge, right? So how do companies identify and align KPIs with, their strategic goals in today's world?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And it's an area that, quite frankly, I would say when we think about the success, particularly around digital transformation, this is one of the places where I'll say allows for success, or we see companies start to go sideways for sure. So I think the first thing, right, when we look at KPIs is that the organization is really clear around what its strategic objectives are and what it is that they're trying to accomplish with their supply chain. And there's no right answer, but I think clarity around what that strategic objective is really important, and that understanding really permeates through the entire organization. Whether it's that the organization's focused on growth, are they really focused on efficiency? Is it around driving a different level of customer satisfaction? Is it driving real innovation and differentiation within the company? And oftentimes what I'll hear from leaders is, well, but I want all of them, right? Which is great. But the challenge with that is that some of these strategic objectives, depending on how you think about them and how you look at the priorities around them, you end up setting up competing priorities that, quite frankly, as it gets down further into the organization, in terms of execution, ends up being just so watered down. So I think first and foremost, it's really having this clarity around what is really the strategic objective of the company. And then, right, making sure that the KPIs that you're setting up are truly actionable and they're measurable. So the other challenge that I see as I speak with C-suite executives is, number one, clarity around what it is that they're trying to accomplish. But then the second piece is oftentimes they start setting up these KPIs that honestly they don't have a way to effectively or efficiently be able to measure and understand the progress that they're making towards those KPIs. So they've now kind of added another level of complexity, if you will, in terms of how they're trying to accomplish the outcomes that are there. The other piece that I also see here is really from the standpoint of how are they reviewing and adjusting the KPI. The intention of a KPI, in my view, is that it's similar to a SMART goal, right? It should give you an opportunity to reflect on how the company is progressing. It should be actionable. It should be specific, but it also requires you to go back and really make sure that those KPIs are relevant against what the business priorities are, and that you're constantly looking at a potential adjustment to those KPIs as well. So I think that's the other aspect around this that I often see gets missed, right? Even if the company has the right strategic objectives identified, they've got the right criteria in terms of that they're actionable and they're measurable. The third piece that I see is that oftentimes there may not be a process in place to go back with some sort of regularity in terms of reviewing, are the KPIs still relevant, and are they still helping the organization in the right direction?
Thank you, Sasha. Especially, I think the things which you mentioned about complexity and then, for KPIs to be actionable rather than just, like letters on the paper, and on the other side, measurable. And as we know, what gets measured gets improved.
Yeah.
There is an increasing complexity of actually horizontally connecting KPIs within the organization, so there's joint success rather than success of one of the verticals within supply chain. And in that sense, that brings me to the next question, which is in this more complex world, which needs to be horizontally connected, what role does employee engagement play in successful implementation?
Yeah. So, look, I think this is critical to success, right? The ability for an employee to understand how their role is impacting a metric, how that metric is rolling up to the performance of the organization, truly cannot be understated. I think one of the things that organizations really need to take a look at, particularly as we think about this, I'll say pivot from a vertical orientation to a horizontal orientation, is that oftentimes the incentives that are in place in terms of driving employee performance evaluation, et cetera, may not necessarily be oriented in the right way in terms of driving for collaboration, cross-departmental, cross-industry, cross-regional, what have you. So I think part of this is, number one, are you really clear about what you want to do from kind of the strategy standpoint? Is the employee aware of what it is that you're asking of them? And then really taking a critical look at the incentive programs that are in place to say, are they aligned? And are they actually supporting the outcome that you want? Because there's nothing worse than an employee saying, look, I get what you want me to do, and I want to go, engage and drive the outcomes from the organization. But if I do that, I'm going to end up penalizing myself, right? It's for like Maslow's law of orders, right? You're going to take care of yourself first. So I think part of what we need to make sure is that we've got not just the clarity, but then also the incentive structure around it that enables the outcomes that we're looking at from these employees as well.
So having in mind that the metrics are an important thing, you linked one, we'll come back to that, but you linked a super important thing is like, okay, what would be the way to celebrate success, right? And how the employees who are engaged will see and understand their contribution. So in that sense, through your as well hands-on experience, which metrics then truly drive long-term success from your view and from your experience?
Yeah. So look, I mean, for me, it's always been about truly driving transformational capability of an organization. And that traditionally doesn't happen linearly. Typically, you end up with a lot of failures until you've got success, right? Babe Ruth's record of home runs is only begot by the number of out of bats that he got as well. And so I think the question becomes from the standpoint of the enrollment of the employee, how are you setting up a place where the employee feels safe to really be able to put ideas forward, that they are empowered to make suggestions and to actually try out things that are new and that are different within boundaries? And how are you holding them accountable? In my opinion, the more important question is, how are you holding them accountable to the learning cycle, as opposed to necessarily, obviously the outcomes matter. You want the outcomes, but part of it is the engagement of the employee in terms of how do they feel safe? How are they learning? How are they pivoting? Are you rewarding the fact that they identified that something's not working and they've pivoted to a different potential option faster than someone else, right? These are things that I think are really important in terms of an engaged workforce, a workforce that feels safe. And what we see is that if you've got an employee workforce that feels like they're in a safe place to be able to suggest improvements and take initiatives to drive higher performance, and they believe that the leadership is behind them, you see these organizations truly outperforming those where it's more task oriented in nature.
Thank you, Sasha. This brings me to a notion of, let's say, putting the KPIs into perspective of, make them clear, make them actionable, make them measurable, and reward the success.
Yeah,
Can we say it in that way?
exactly. Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize it.
So let's end here and then build this as a start for potential next conversation with you, where we can pivot, as you said, from the KPIs towards some interesting areas as well, which KPIs touch, but we'll drill down into them into one of the next episodes of Digital Supply Chain Institute Insights in Action. And we'll call upon you once again, Sasha, to join us, please.